I'm going to call to order the Liquor Control Board meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Deputy Mayor Thomas Renner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, welcome, Jenny.
Good evening. So I'll just do the two renewals that aren't here. The first one, Beverage Warehouse, is adding a tobacco substitute, so vape products. That's a new license for them. And John Ryan Post, the state gives an option for a third-class license. They can pay a seasonal, so pay 6 months and then pay another 6 months. So their 6 months is up October 31st. So there's no changes. It's just a continuation. That's what the state calls it.
Okay, and no concerns from staff on these renewals?
No.
No, okay. Any questions, concerns from council? Does someone want to make a motion to approve the item A and D renewals?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aurora, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And then we have some new ones.
And now, yes, so pleased to present two new restaurants to Winooski. The first one is Dumb Luck Pub and Grill at 211 Main Street. It'll be a first class and a third class. And Ed is here. You want to come up and talk a little bit about your business?
Not very good at public speaking. Basically, my wife Patricia and I, over here, we just started a family pub restaurant, basically. And that's what we go as a family restaurant, children included, everything. We're not a bar, although we will have alcohol. But it's basically just a nice place to hang out, listen to some music, and eat.
Awesome.
I don't know anything else to say. All right, pretty good. All right. But
Well, thanks for coming in and
Not a
welcome to
problem.
the
Thank you.
Winooski Business Meeting. Any questions, concerns from council?
No.
All right, do I have a motion to approve item B, the first and third class liquor licenses for Dumb Luck Pub and Grill?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and then to have Lance McKee here. He's reopening the location to McKee's Original. So he's going to have a first, third, outside consumption, and sidewalk.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Lance McKee, formerly owned McKee's Pub and Grill for 35 years. We sold out a couple years ago to another company, and unfortunately they couldn't make it with the slim margins that are out there. I'm reopening, but as McKee's Original, the way we started, very little food, but more just of a hangout bar and game room. So it'll be just a meeting place where people come down and relax. Our hours are very limited, 4 to 11 most of the time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday 12 to 11, and Saturday 12 to 11, and Sunday 12 to 8. Just want to get people in a happy hour meeting area for people to relax. Not a happy hour per se,
Yeah.
but a place where people can conjugate and just relax.
Awesome. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Any questions, concerns from council?
Excited to have you back.
Yeah, excited to be back.
Thanks.
Do I have a motion to approve item C, first and third class liquor licenses, outside consumption permit, and sidewalk permit for McKee's Original?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you so much.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you all for coming in.
Yeah.
That's the end of our Liquor Control Board meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, excuse me. It's 6:04 p.m. I will call to order the Winooski City Council meeting. We have agenda review first. Any changes to this evening's agenda?
No.
All right. Public comment. I don't think we have any members of the public on. Let me check Zoom real quick. No, okay. We will move to our consent agenda. We have the Cannabis Control Commission and City Council minutes from September 16th, payroll warrant for September 1 to 14 and 15 to 28, accounts payable warrant October 2nd, Municipal Energy Resilience Program grant application, and American Rescue Plan Act stormwater grants, and a lease agreement for the new plow truck. Any concerns from council?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Council reports. Charlie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. On September 27th, I met with Housing Commission Chair Sean Gilpin and staff liaison Jasmine Hurley to begin work on the Housing Commission's annual work plan with the goal of aligning the Housing Commission work plan and City Council's budget priorities. The Winooski Housing Commission meets next on October 22nd at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. There's also a hybrid option available via the city website. The Board of Civil Authority has been engaging in the property appraisal appeals process, which concludes this Wednesday when inspecting members present their findings to the wider board for deliberation and voting. Notices will be sent out to property owners within 15 days of deliberation, and that's mine.
Thank you. Thomas?
So, I feel like I met with Downtown Winooski and the Planning and Housing Commissions a very long time ago, so bear with me. Downtown Winooski, the treasurer, Seth, is departing, so they appointed some new members, and just want to thank Seth for all of the work that he's done for Downtown Winooski, but also for Winooski as a mayor of this town. We really appreciate everything that he's done, and we'll certainly miss him on Downtown Winooski, but the board is currently full, so everything is just moving on there. It's very exciting. I also attended the Planning and Housing Commission's joint meeting, and that was an interesting meeting. They've had a few of those where both of the commissions have come together. They were discussing inclusionary housing requirements at that meeting. So they were talking a lot about incentives for building affordable housing units. They discussed height of buildings, the parking of buildings. There was a lot of discussion around what percentage of a building should be designated as affordable. They also discussed things like GMT and the impacts of the the potential changes of service in Winooski, and what our housing goals look like. They didn't come, that meeting I don't think was intended to come to any final decision, as they do have some more joint meetings planned in the future. They also discussed at length a roundtable that they are planning, which will be a developer roundtable, and they are aiming for November. I don't know if I've narrowed it on a date since I met with them then, but November is when they were looking to do that. And those are my updates.
Thank you. Related, I'll just remind folks that the Planning Commission also had been working on replacement ordinance in addition to the inclusionary zoning work with the Housing Commission, and have a semifinal draft intended to preserve 2+ bedroom housing by requiring replacement of equivalent units in new development or payment in lieu to our housing trust fund in some cases, creating a funding stream for that program. That's it for me.
Are they meeting this month?
Yes, hold on. I will find the date. Actually, it's this Thursday. This Thursday is the next
Okay.
meeting, the 10th, 6:30 p.m.
All right.
Thank you.
So the Infrastructure Commission met on September 19th. We welcomed 2 new commissioners. An alternate was that we approved at council in September was unable to make it because they were at the Board of Civil Authority meetings. We thank her for her vast amount of service to our community. We, in addition to general orientation, we reviewed master plan, the strategic strategies and priorities, as well as recent walk-bike plan that was adopted this past winter, and started to review the work plan development and drafting. There's quite a bit of conversation about elements tangible elements for the group to work on coming into the new year, as well as just always lots of interest and questions about the capital projects and the progress there. We anticipate having a joint meeting with finance, as we do typically. That may happen this month. We haven't connected with Angela yet about or yourself about the Finance Commission for coordination. So if not this month, then definitely next month, as we tend to do. And then at some point in the near future, we'd like to have a joint meeting with Inclusion and Belonging. That has yet to be scheduled. So I'll have a revised draft for the commission to review this month at our regular meeting. It should be October 17th. We might move from the community room at the pool to City Hall if there's not another meeting here, if DRB is not meeting and if planning meeting isn't meeting. So we might just move locations, but it'll probably still be on our regular date and time. That's all I have.
Awesome. I have a couple updates. So Jenny and I and Ruth, who is currently one of the co-chairs for Inclusion and Belonging Commission, we had 2 interviews last Monday for folks, and hopefully the coming council meeting we'll see those prospective applicants come before the council. We still have 1 alternate position open, so if folks are interested in kind of getting a sense of being on a commission, definitely welcome folks to apply for that position still and reach out with any questions. Our next meeting is going to be on the 17th, so Thursday, October 17th, and that's going to be at 6 p.m. over Zoom. One of the things that has come up for discussion is around thinking about outreach and engagement and how we can do that better, both as the Inclusion and Belonging Commission as well as reporting out to the council and other commissions.
All right, thank you. Next up is city updates. Elaine.
Yes, so please join us in recognizing the great service of Corporal Jason Zider, who is stepping down as school resource officer to pursue his next career opportunity supporting children and families outside of Vermont. Jason's more than 8 years in Winooski and almost 25 years in law enforcement included many accomplishments that will leave a lasting impression. These include development of Public Safety Camp, which has run 3 strong years at Winooski School District, instructing the DARE program, training teachers and other school resource officers around the state, working with the Vermont Department of Children and Families to support investigations, offering first aid, CPR, and stop the bleed trainings, and very notably receiving the 2024 Kids Safe Vermont Outstanding Professional Award. Talk about going out with a bang. Jason will be tremendously missed. You can view and share our full recognition of Jason on the city's website and social media channels. The Department of Public Works began a concrete repair and road resurfacing project which will affect Hall Street, Audette Street, and Shepherd Street. This project is expected to take about 4 weeks to complete. Residents in the area will receive door hanger notices, and all project details, including the schedule, work hours, construction activities, parking restrictions, traffic, and driveway impacts can be found by visiting the news updates section on our website at winooskivt.gov. The Vermont general election will occur on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Winooski Senior Center. That's at 123 Barlow Street. To view the official warning, sample ballot, and all election and voting information, please visit winooskivt.gov/vote. The Vermont Secretary of State has begun mailing general election ballots directly to active and registered voters. This is your ballot for voting. Please connect with the city clerk's office if you have any questions about your ballot. And finally, please spend some time with Winooski Recreation and Parks during our volunteer park cleanup days. Volunteers are needed for park and trail cleanup efforts on October 11th at the Cassavant Natural Area and on October 9th at Memorial Park. Activities include plant trimming, litter pickup, debris removal, and other basic trail maintenance. To sign up, visit the news update section on our website at winooskivt.gov.
I think you said October 11th and November 9th?
I said October 9th, and then I wondered if that was right.
It is November 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to regular items. First up for discussion is the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission Annual Report Presentation and Budget Preview. Welcome, Charlie Baker.
Thank you very much. Thank you for making time on your agenda tonight. And I'm hoping that your city manager has the budget preview because I forgot that number that I sent you on Friday.
I think it's in the memo.
Yes. It's a couple $100 more than it was last year. But,
8,280?
I'm sorry.
For the total, yes.
367 increase.
Oh, little bit more than a couple hundred. But yeah, but that's, and it's, our dues are based on the grand list growth. So that's kind of your proportionate share. Some towns go down a little bit. And we did what we're proposing, our board hasn't actually voted on it yet. So we haven't sent the formal dues notice to the city, but my board votes on it next week. It's a 2.5% increase, but it's not consistent for every town because it varies depending on how much your grand list grew compared to other towns. Anyway, sorry, went down in the weeds there a little bit. Thank you again. You got my report in your packet, great. For those that are not in the room here or maybe don't have this in front of you, the first page is background. I'll just review this quickly and then take any feedback. It gives background on the commission, on our board, and how we leverage municipal dollars, about $500,000 of municipal dollars and state dollars to bring in $5.5 million of federal and state dollars. And then your representatives are down at the bottom of this first page. Thank you to Mike O'Brien, is on our, been a very active member for a long time, and thank you to the mayor for serving as alternate. And your staff has been great. Obviously, this is last year's reps, as I'm looking at Eric, so this will be updated for FY25 that we're now. On the second page and half of the third page are specific projects that we worked on with the city last fiscal year, including a bike ped master plan, a scoping study of La Fontaine and Dion, looking at pet facilities, stormwater, some brownfields, some mapping assistance, and other technical transportation assistance. Happy to take any feedback on how we did in providing those services, good or bad, or questions?
As far as the walk bike plan, I think your team was responsive to some additional recommendations from the community.
Okay.
And we're willing to meet with the Infrastructure Commission. I think council had met and there was some additional feedback that the community wanted to provide, and time was made for that, and your staff was able to accommodate that in December, January, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add a comment? So the walk bike plan in particular, I felt like set a new high watermark in terms of community engagement, which your team was very committed to, which we, of course, in this community appreciate in particular and hope it becomes a model for the other ones.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's a constant work in progress, but we are trying to get better at particularly engaging folks that don't usually come to public meetings, right? So appreciate the support and partnership in that work. Thank you for that. You have a little bit a stormwater project in our current work program this year. And then you have a couple projects that are in what's our transportation improvement program, which our board votes on to allow VTrans to use federal funding for these transportation projects. So these mirror what's in the state's transportation capital program, the rail crossing and an intersection improvement, which is not yet, well, I guess it is scheduled for FY26 and 27. That's good.
Charlie, can I ask?
Yes.
They did
Sure.
just do repairs over there. Is this something new above and beyond that?
The 15 East Spring Street you're talking about, or the
The
rail?
Malletts Bay rail crossing improvements.
Yeah, we are in FY25, so it could be that project that happened this summer.
Okay.
Right?
I thought that was just temporary. Was
Yeah,
it
it's
just
Down
a
here?
On Malletts Bay?
No, that was like, that was a
temporary
repair.
fix?
A repair,
Okay, was,
to my knowledge.
okay.
yeah, 150,000 seems like a lot of money. Doesn't go that far, so yeah, it may have only been that project. The last couple pages are projects, regional projects that we do without regard to any specific municipality. We are starting work, well, we've been working for a little while on updating our regional plan that we call the ECOS plan. And hold that thought, because I want to come back to that and dive a little bit more deeply into that as a result of state legislative changes. We have more to do there. Public engagement and equity. Yeah, thank you for the comments on working this past year with you on engaging more community members. I also want to let you know that there's been some discussion amongst, I'll call it the core towns in Chittenden County, It was with the managers in particular about whether we might be able to support having an equity policy advisor at the RPC that can work with, a handful of towns. We have kind of thrown out a tentative budget number, sorry, I'm planting seeds for your budget conversations, of 25,000 per town. But we can, we have some flexibility there, but that's just was a starting point. And really trying to think about how we can support municipalities doing that work internally. So it'd be much more municipally focused, not regionally focused. Although I think you may have met Ann Nelson Stoner, who's our equity and engagement manager, and also have a little bit more of a team that could support each other on municipal efforts, or lots of times we're working together. Like we may be running a project like your bike ped master plan, but it's really a municipal project, but we have an interest in helping that work. So I don't know if Elaine wants to add any more to that, but I'll just plant that seed at this point. Okay, you guys can talk about it later.
Okay. Talk about the budget item later, or is this a chance to talk a little bit more about this particular position? Because I know there was a memo also included about it.
Oh, okay.
It's up to council, yeah.
Yeah.
It was going to be one of my questions, Aurora, so I'm happy to, if you want to talk
Do you
about
want to take those now, or do you want to finish?
You can.
The summary.
I won't be here that long, so if you want,
Let's dig
if you
into
want to
that.
talk to me about it, do it
Yeah.
now. If you just want to talk to Elaine later.
Yeah. Go ahead, Aurora.
Okay. I'm excited to see this kind of coming into form, and that this position, it sounds like you already have an equity position, so this person wouldn't be working on their own.
Right.
I think one of the big questions that come up for me, there's like some interest stated specifically in 6 towns.
Yeah.
But there's some others who are potentially interested. My wondering is there room for this potentially to end up being 2 positions that like each specialize in specific towns? Because having more than 6 sounds like a lot for one person. And I see GMT is on there too as its own municipality. So I'm just wondering, and that might be.
Yeah, and I will say, yeah, absolutely. I think, happy to explore whatever. And I think we were also trying to leave some space, knowing maybe, early discussions might be positive and then they may go negative. We might have some where it wasn't as positive early on that get more positive. So, we're flexible, and certainly haven't pinned anything down yet until obviously you go through your budget processes, and then we'll have a better sense of who's actually committed to it. I think 6 towns is probably the outer limit.
Yeah, that was my thought.
And so, if we end up getting 8, that might be great, and it might actually be 2 people, and we can really, divide and conquer and be more productive. So
Okay.
we're flexible at this point for sure.
Okay, wonderful. That's great to know. Another question I had is, now this does get a little bit into the budget, is maybe less of a question and more of like, I do lean towards it being a flat cost among the municipalities. I feel like that, I don't know, that just feels the most fair, as well as incentivizing folks to actually use the resource that's there.
I'll vote for that,
Yeah.
but I don't think I have a vote. But
Yeah.
and I think we haven't gotten down to brass tacks yet. I'll
Okay.
say with any of the town managers until you're all further along in your budget conversations.
Yeah, and I'd like to see more review about a per capita model or a grand list model like you already use.
Yeah, that's what my question was going to be around, because I do, like, if we all pay the same amount, I agree there's probably likely more of a buy-in from the other towns to want to participate. That said, the other towns listed have a lot more money than Winooski does, significantly by some of them. So I would like to see, and also our town has recently had to pay the same as another very rich town, and neighbors were very upset about that for a different project. So, keeping that all in mind, that said, if there was a way to guarantee that, all of these towns would get the same amount of time from this person, I I would be personally more open to splitting the cost equally, but there's a lot until we get to that point in the conversation anyway. And I agree with Aurora. I feel like that, I wonder, I don't know if maybe 2 positions or maybe a full position and like an assistant or
Right.
something to help that person for their scheduling. Because that would, it seems like that would be a lot of work for one person to do it well.
And definitely, we'll see if we can, I'm going to South Burlington later tonight, I'll see if they'll pay half of it.
Like, that would be great.
Perfect.
That would be great.
Perfect.
Fully endorse
That makes a lot of sense to me.
No, we won't get there yet.
I have one other note, but maybe this is more Elaine than you. Mostly a possible consultation topics, and I have a suggestion, which ties to a little bit of a concern that I could potentially have with this role, is that it gives an excuse not for towns to necessarily, I don't know, make sure they have the equity staff that they need, and that would be how equity positions on the municipal level could work in a way that's sustainable, because I feel like that's the question that has come up with Winooski, and that this could be like a good bridge, but not necessarily the end-all be-all solution. So I feel like that is important to keep in mind.
Yeah, fair point. Thank you.
I do have some questions if you have time.
Sure.
Okay.
When do you have to leave by?
You know, a few more minutes.
There won't be,
Prioritize.
Be at
So
South Burlington
6:30.
by 7, right?
Milton by 7 and South Burlington by 8, but.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Milton.
Milton by 7.
That's a 25.
Yeah.
But that's
He
my,
leaves here in-
those are my issues.
so I have a few questions, and you can always feel free to follow up,
Yeah,
so.
sure.
One is, so I don't, Winooski completed a traffic calming plan in 2022, and that is currently unfunded, which is not your problem. But one thing that came up as an opportunity for us to ensure that we had tools to complete assessments that help inform measures taken to mitigate traffic speeds. Staff suggested that they might be able to utilize tools that CCRPC has to help with those assessments, and it was unclear to me what those tools were and whether or not there would need to be an MOU or what type of agreement might need to be in place to access said tools.
We do have like traffic modeling and other highway safety assessment tools, but honestly, they're free to you. Just
Okay.
let us know, that's part of our transportation technical assistance. Just let us know, you know, particularly Eleni or Jason on
Okay.
our staff, and happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you for confirming that.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention, there has been some requests. I'm with the Winooski Bridge replacement, a traffic light at the East Allen and East Spring Street intersection. There's a section of sidewalk that is missing, and it is identified in the walk-bike plan as one of the priority projects. And some community members are hoping that there can be sidewalk with the installation of that traffic light and incorporated with the bridge replacement project to complete that sidewalk section. And I don't know if that's come to your attention.
Not specifically, but, you know, I think V-Trans is working, you know, with both communities on the final design, so I think definitely I would try to interject it in that conversation.
Yeah, and that has already happened. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
to the extent that CCRPC would be able to provide additional context or support for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to Eleni about it.
Okay.
Eleni and Jason are also the two that have been most involved with that. And sorry, I missed where that segment was.
East Allen and East Spring Street, that's where
Okay.
the traffic light.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
Yeah.
East Spring Street doesn't have sidewalk on that stretch.
gotcha.
And final question.
Yes.
So I see in your memo that you secured an EPA grant for $500,000. Is all that money spent at this point?
No, we just got that a year or so ago. It typically takes a few years for us to be able to invest that in the community and brownfields
Okay.
projects. So yeah, if you have any sites that are potentially brownfields that you want
It
to
is
assess.
likely that we might.
Yeah, just ask us. We'll
Okay.
put that money to work.
Great. It's great to hear that is money that's available and is not completely spent or encumbered.
Yeah, and honestly, we've been in situations in other years where we haven't had resources, and then we'll actually ask the state or ask a neighboring RPC if we can use some of their money. So
I see, okay.
We can find a solution even if it's not a specific grant that we got.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other council questions?
I have one other really brief one about the Chittenden County Communication Union District and just making sure that Winooski is kind of part of that, because I know something that came up a lot with ARPA is that even though we're very much a city, our residents don't necessarily have the access to the internet that they need.
I think the answer to that is no.
Okay.
Winooski is not part of that communications union district. And I can't remember the conversation that happened a couple of years ago. It may have been with Burlington Telecom, who was like, oh, we're going to provide fiber throughout the city. And they were, just up to this point, I think, at that time. So it was a ballot item in the other communities, and it wasn't. I do think the city council could join the CUD, but honestly, to be honest with you, the broadband board is prioritizing the unserved addresses. And so, so I don't know that there was actually any money to help out your situation.
Okay, that's helpful
I'm
to
sorry
know.
to put it like that.
Yeah.
But I would definitely call the providers and,
Burlington Telecom is expanding.
yeah,
They're much further in than before.
okay. Good, I think there was kind of an assumption there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have one public comment question.
Oh, great.
Paul, if you want to bring Connor over. Connor,
Hi, can you hear me?
welcome, yes.
Oh, hi. No, this was just like, I wanted to do a quick update on the airport
Oh,
commission.
okay. Sorry,
So,
just a second.
Yeah.
Do you want to go, Charlie?
If you could give
Yeah,
me a
you
few
can
more
get out of
minutes.
Oh.
The last part of my report is there's, the last 2 pages are a summary of Act 181, which was the Act 250 bill. This is a summary, kind of from the RPC perspective. There's a lot more in that bill, so don't take this as a bill summary. Like, there's a lot more in that bill, but it is changing a bit the relationship between the regional planning commissions and our municipalities, in that they're putting more weight on our land use map that is part of our regional plan to do 2 things. One is provide the geography for designations. So like you have a downtown designation. So one of the things we'll look at with the city and probably with Remy is, are those boundaries exactly right? Do you want a little bit more area in there? I think it was one of the good things was I think the legislature is kind of opening up to including a little bit more in those downtown boundaries. And then secondly, the other purpose is going to be for Act 250 regulatory relief, which you've had a lot of because you have a neighborhood development area designation. It's going to kind of mirror that, and I would expect just about the whole city would be covered in the new map to give you some limited Act 250 relief up to like 50 units per project. There's also an opportunity for the city to separately or follow up with an application to become 100% exempt from Act 250 if the city decided to do that. So this is really a heads up. We're trying to give every elected body in the county just a heads up that we'll be working with you more. Sarah Muskin, who's on my staff, is plugged into this meeting, probably watching from home, and she's the planner assigned to the city. And so we'll probably really be starting that work in a few months with you. We're kind of doing some internal work now. And there's a focus on meaningful participation and environmental justice and some of the community engagement that we were talking about earlier, and also housing targets. So I think there's a lot to unpack there with the city as we go through all the engagement, the map, designations, Act 250, and housing targets. And so heads up. So, the schedule is on the back in the table. And it's a real rough schedule, but we're kind of hoping to do the bulk of the work over the winter here and then be done kind of at the end of the spring and summer to finalize the map. So kind of the next 9 months or so. Happy to take any questions on that. And the other thing I've been trying to say, I think we have a really great working relationship with the city, but there may be, I don't anticipate this in Winooski, but I've been saying to other towns, so I'll say it to you, we may come up at some point where there's a little bit of a rub, you know, the statutory language is saying this and the city wants that. Just, you know, I think as long as we remember, we're all trying to do the right thing and help each other, and, you know, we'll work through those rubs if they come up. So.
Appreciate the preview.
Yeah.
I will say we're very excited that the RPC was tasked for figuring out the housing targets, because it should be a regional conversation, not just a city by city.
Yeah, well, even the state, we're kind of participating in trying to figure out what the state target should be, which is an interesting conversation too. But thank you very much for your time, I really appreciate it. Sorry to run, but glad we got to talk for a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks.
Were there any other, I know Charlie's leaving, but any other questions on these? You can go.
No,
You can go.
we're good.
You can go. I was just going to ask, I'm here, Mike O'Brien, our rep, is on Zoom, so if there was any other questions folks had.
Nothing immediate.
Okay. Mike or Sarah, if you did have anything to add, please use the raise hand, feel free. If not, feel free to just stay in the background. And then Connor, I must have, I was not looking. I think I missed his hand from earlier in the meeting. So Paul, can you bring him back over, please? Welcome back, Connor.
Am I here?
Yeah. I think you had you wanted to share an airport update?
Oh, yeah, like, is that all right? I realized I missed public forum, so I apologize.
Yeah, it would have been in public comment, but go ahead.
We can do another time, if that would be better.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
Okay. All right, so for Airport Commission, this last week, and I do apologize to you, Mayor, I owe you a email/text about like catching up about that. This last meeting, we mainly spoke about airport finances and actually the contract with Skinny Pancake and the fact that they are, to be frank, never open. I'm sure we've all flown in, and have seen that close, so we are working on that. I will send a memo tomorrow morning with a full rundown of that conversation, and I am sure Jenny will keep me on that, so look forward to that. As a quick, as a fun thing, the airport is now number 5 in the country for small airports. That's from USA Today, so take that as you will. But I do appreciate the fact that we beat out Manchester Airport. I think they're number 8 now. Some people ask what I have against New Hampshire, and I say, unfortunately, an eastern border. Anyway, I want to thank the staff for that at the airport and everything that we all do. You all do in Winooski to make that happen. On the 12th, there will be an event at Carnes, the ice rink in South Burlington I think it's Dorset Street, to unveil the new mascot or whatever. There will be several people there in the dunk tank. I will be one of them. So if City Council wants to show up, I'm happy to pay $10 each person just to dunk me. That's fine. Finally, I don't have to take any questions, and I'm looking forward to them. Councilor Oakley. Deputy Mayor, you need a haircut. Thanks.
Are there any updates on the noise exposure map or public hearings for that?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a great question. On the 24th at 6 p.m. at the Winooski School, there will be an open forum for the unveiling of the first updated version of the sound mitigation map. The head of the Air National Guard will be there. The head of the airport, I will be there, and several other commissioners will be there.
Do you know what their plan is for promoting that hearing?
So they have done some social media, but to your point, I'll be working with Paul to try to get that really promoted.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to item B on for discussion approval, overview and approval of proposed approach to redeveloping the Armory Lot, including public input.
Okay, so staff would like to provide an overview of what we'd like to see happen at the site of the Winooski Armory and get council direction on the public input process. I am going to mostly read from the memo here, and we'll be joined by Rebby and Jasmine, who worked extensively on this memo. So did John Rasher. So in late 2022, the city was made aware of the Vermont National Guard's plans to decommission and sell the property of the Winooski Armory building located at 255 Fountain Street. As is their right, the National Guard is giving the city of Winooski the first right of refusal. That means the Guard will offer to sell at market rate to the municipality hosting the facility without first offering the property in the open market. The Armory parcel is located within the city's residential zoning district, and being a larger plot than is typically found in Winooski could fit a relatively large number of housing units. Let's see. We have this item on the agenda for a couple of reasons. One, by Winooski's charter, only city council has the authority to acquire property. And two, the public should be informed, especially when a significant change to the property is being considered. In terms of timeline, currently the property is vacant. The Vermont National Guard must complete more work before they can take down the building. They anticipate demolishing this fall, although we're rather deep into fall now, so who knows. Depends on funding. Once the building is demolished, they must undertake significant environmental remediation and certification before they can sell the property. This process can often take longer than expected, and that must be completed before a sale. That is to say, we're not sure what the timeline is going to be. In terms of what could be on this 1.5 acre parcel, the most extreme scenario in terms of dimensions allowed by current zoning regulations is covering half the lot with 10-foot setbacks on all sides and 35 feet tall, which is roughly 3 stories. Note, though, that lot coverage and building height could be even more if the project falls within the city's priority housing project definition. The concept scope currently recommended by city staff would likely qualify it as a priority housing project, and I'll get into that in a bit. In terms of allowed uses, a single unit would be residential or non-residential. There's actually a range of things that could go there. For residential, single unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, and 4 unit dwellings are allowed in this district. Dwellings with up to 6 units are also allowed, only though as priority housing projects and as planned unit developments. Multiple buildings on a lot are allowed as planned unit developments. For non-residential uses that align with the residential nature of this district, those are also allowed. Those could include retail sales uses of up to 2,500 square feet, restaurant uses of up to 2,000 square feet, and daycare uses. In terms of allowed density, this district does not have a density limit. That said, a likely maximum number of units for this property is 53 units, and there's a lot of assumptions baked into that, which are covered in the memo. Now, all I've said here is what is allowed by zoning. Note that the actual development potential, including density of future projects, is limited by at least the following considerations: dimensional requirements, number of units allowed per building, parking requirements, and site engineering requirements. The project concept recommended by staff is based on feedback from various community groups, reports, and data from official city planning documents. So that concept would be a medium-sized development, townhome or cottage court design, all affordable, with income banding on rents in the range of 100% to 65% of area median income. This would add income diversity in the currently higher income residential neighborhood. That characterization of higher income is according to the American Community Survey. Rental units and homes for going on in terms of project scope. So rental units and homes for purchase through a shared equity model, like at Butternut Grove condominiums on West Allen Street. This would help address the growing inaccessibility of home ownership while also meeting the need for larger affordable rental units. Continuing with staff recommended project scope include larger units to better accommodate community needs and align with the goals set by the Planning Commission, Housing Commission, and City Council. So again, this bullet list of, this wish list, if you will, is based on many information sources from related city plans, reports, needs assessments, and discussions at community meetings. A detailed list is in the council memo on the website. Staff's approach to the development, this project, is to not have city taxpayers providing the money to acquire the parcel. Instead, staff would require a housing developer do so. Staff plan to publish a request for proposals that includes this requirement and the concept scope above before the end of December 2024. We do know that there is at least one developer interested. Although the details of the project are still undefined, having an agreement for the parcel will allow, through the RFP process, will allow the selected developer to begin raising funds needed to build to the city's scope. Affordable housing requires significant public investment, and raising such funds requires a long lead time. So that's the overview of what staff would like to see happen with the Armory lot. Are there any questions before I turn to the public input question?
I do have questions, but it depends if you want to get through the full memo first.
Sure, why not? So for public input, redevelopment projects significantly different from what is currently in place can result in pushback by those in the neighborhood, especially if they are also different from the neighborhood. The concept scope recommended by staff to replace the Armory is different in both of those ways. Obtaining and incorporating neighborhood input can reduce pushback, though can also be counter to project goals. Development projects directed by a municipality could solicit public input at a range of intensities. This is just a sampling. Obviously, there's variations that would be possible. So an option A would be, so from extreme to extreme. So option A, the minimum requirement would be what's required by the relevant permit. This level is appropriate which is a couple of hearings essentially. A level is appropriate when this municipality does not plan to change the concept, scope, or design significantly based on public input. You don't want to ask if you don't actually want to hear. It can be more efficient through permitting, but can prompt lawsuits if abutters feel they have been unjustly left out of the development process. Whether or not such lawsuits are successful, they do extend project timelines and increase the cost of the project to the developer and the municipality. There are cases where such lawsuits and appeals cause the developer to cancel a project. These cases that I'm referring to I've seen in Vermont. On the other end, a high intensity public engagement process can involve surveying, neighborhood meetings, and pursuing feedback from as many people as possible. This level is appropriate if the municipality plans to change the concept scope to be highly responsive to the input from such a process, or is not sure what the public would want. While more time-consuming and expensive on the front end, this approach may feel the most transparent to the community. Lawsuits from abutters are still possible if the final project differs significantly from the input provided by the abutters. And then somewhere in the middle there would be what I'm calling here option C, medium intensity public input. That can involve using existing information sources to determine the concept scope. Soliciting from the neighborhood only concerns on the concept scope, that is without implying that the scope itself will change significantly. So soliciting for concerns as opposed to overall input on what it should look like. Engaging the public on aesthetic design aspects of the project is another aspect of what could be, what medium intensity public engagement could involve. Note that this approach C is similar to the one that's been being taken by the city in the redevelopment of the Bryan Community Center, led by the Champlain Housing Trust. It is a different kind of a neighborhood though, so I do want to be transparent about that. Lawsuits from abutters are still possible under this scenario, but the idea of such an approach is to give the neighborhood more influence on what can be influenced about the project without losing its overall goals. And so staff do recommend this third option C, the medium intensity, because in reference to the high intensity public engagement option B, the concept scope described in this memo has already been extensively informed by public processes. Undertaking more would likely be redundant, both in terms of whose opinions are requested and the input provided. And in contrast to the minimum requirement option A and the high intensity option B, medium intensity option C gives the neighborhood more say where they can, assuming a nearly set concept scope, which, might not be the case here. An advantage over option A, C also front loads the developer with design input when it could be incorporated at less cost. So the ask for this section of tonight of council is, are the existing input sources sufficient to define the concept scope of this project and to begin pursuing an RFP? If not, what concerns do you need staff to address?
Thank you, Lynn.
My questions are not related to, my immediate questions are not related to the public input, so I don't know how you want to order them.
Let's get your feedback on that first, and then we'll revisit. And I'll just say that I approve of the approach proposed here. I appreciate you listing all those inputs. I think what is sort of in scope here is very reflective of what we have heard over and over again from people coming to our meetings and from engagement we've done out in the community, particularly with folks who are struggling with housing. So yeah, I support what you have proposed here.
I also am in support of option C. That makes a lot of sense to me, and sounds like it should fully balance the needs in an equitable manner of our different residents.
I like being genuine, so if we do not intend on incorporating the feedback received into the project or design changes, then I would say the moderate path is probably the best path.
Yeah, I think that C makes sense. Ellen, I just want to go back to what you had mentioned earlier about the percentage of ownership in this potential building versus rental in this potential building.
I think that's likely to be determined by the developer and what they think can make.
Okay.
The preliminary discussions I've heard are like some mix.
Okay.
I don't
Because
think-
is Butternut, and I'm mainly posing this to Aurora, is there rentals in there, or is it all ownership?
It's all ownership.
I don't think this would be more than 50% shared equity.
Okay.
So if anything, it would be more rentals. But still, we wanted to make sure that it's both, because those are both priorities of the
Yeah.
city. Larger affordable rental units, because a lot of people, even with shared equity, either aren't interested or still can't attain that level of
Yeah.
housing stability at this point, with that gap widening year over year. So we wanted to make sure that, since theoretically we get the say this time, that we should ask for
Yeah, I
all
guess-
of the housing priorities that we have.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because we very rarely have a lot of land come open. We probably won't ever again, except for maybe the church. And we know with the Main Street redevelopment, we're going to have a lot of opportunities there, likely for rentals. The main / only way for middle class and lower earning folks in this country to earn income is by housing, and the program at Butternut is so amazing to be like, quite frank. It gives folks who never thought they would be able to buy a home a chance to buy a home. And I know about the extreme interest from folks who weren't able to get into Butternut. So I know that there is a desire for another project that is similar to that. And I think that a lot of folks, as you know, people have seen that the Armory is coming down, people have started talking about what is going in there. And I've heard from a lot of people that they're hoping that another Butternut will go in there. So I'm not entirely 100% fully believing the input, and that folks would want this to be more rentals than potential home ownership. And again, to try to set people up for a better life, I think the type of home ownership that in Butternut that is attainable by more people is really crucial. And when we have this opportunity, and likely won't have an opportunity like this for a very, very long time, I'd like us to really consider the desire we have for it to be what type of split. And I understand that the developer makes the decision at the end of the day, But if we have the first right of refusal and we're looking for a partner here, that partner can, I don't know how, Elaine, this is a contracting question probably for you, and how in depth we can get into their proposals with folks before we partner with them to make this offer on the land. The building, and when you talk to developers, building homes for people to buy is something that they're not doing right now at a level that folks who live in Winooski can afford. Developers can build a $700,000 home for somebody to buy easy. What they can't do is build a $150,000, $200,000 condo. So if we have the option to assist in that, I really think we should consider that going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. If it was just rental units across the board, I think we do specifically also need large, affordable rental units, which are, I would say, almost equally difficult for a developer to build. Obviously, we've built incentives and, we're working on ways to encourage that sort of development, but I wouldn't say it's any easier than looking at homeownership models. And I have heard a few times from, I believe the Working Community Challenge core team, and a few other residents that some of the new American community are not necessarily interested in the shared equity model, that they don't feel like it's, it's legitimate home ownership, which, it is kind of a medium area between, traditional home ownership and renting. It's so much more stable. And I do think that at this point it is kind of the best programming we have available, short of just giving people equity in a home. But I think it's not as widely popular as I had thought when I first started. I've heard quite a bit of pushback, and that might just be people, they don't know a ton about the programming, and maybe
I
it's
wonder
more
if that's an education piece.
Yeah, but I do agree it is very important and a rare opportunity to offer affordable homeownership, which is increasingly out of people's reach. But I also think that the opportunity for housing built specifically, geared towards our new American families who are larger, who would like to stay at the school, who are being displaced potentially, I think it's also a goal. But again, it might totally be dependent on developer funding stacks. I'm not sure how that balance changes their budgeting. But I mean, I'm certainly open to seeing that number change a little bit. I think both are necessary, but
and I'm not advocating for no rentals. I just, I think of a new American family, if they can get out of that cycle of continuously renting and start to earn some equity, everything that opens up.
And one thing I'll add that's coming to mind with what Thomas is saying is that saying they would be our partner, but Champlain Housing Trust does have the home ownership equity program that's specifically geared to bring more racial equity into home ownership. So that's specifically with buying. So that's in the back of my mind too, of how that there's some additional programs out there that might make this even more reachable and even more accessible than when Butternut went up.
Yeah, and I would say I've been trying to do some outreach as well to explore products for halal compliant mortgages as well.
Yes, that was going to be, that's the other thing. I don't know. I know Opportunities was trying.
There's one in existence, but it's a $5,000 loan, so that's not going to cut it. So I've been in communications with a few banks who are exploring the idea. I think it's hard because it exists in other states, but Vermont's just such a small market. I think it's not common for larger banks to offer such a specific product, especially one that is very administratively heavy and not very lucrative for them, just based off of how it becomes halal compliant. So ideally it would be great to be able to package like CHT's new programming that they didn't have when Butternut was built, and then potentially more accessible mortgage products as well, and do like a whole marketing campaign so that people can really be educated on like maybe it is accessible for them. That's definitely our plan.
Yeah, the interesting thing about some of the pushback is that it restricts the amount of equity you can earn. So it's a double-edged sword though, because is there anything that we can offer that where you can build full equity and have it accessible on the front end? No, that was kind of Jasmine's scenario. So I will say that if you're not saying that it could be zero, that it should be 0% rental. We could discuss it, but we are in the position to at least put in the RFP like a highly desired ratio.
Right.
And so if council has a very firm number in mind, you should probably tell us. Or if you want us to get input somehow about that, then that could be part of it. But because what we have now, 50% is based on what we've heard so far.
Before, we're a little off tangent now. I want to make sure, Charlie, you're able to give feedback on the public engagement approach.
Thanks.
Did you have any?
Yeah. I think with this particular project, and as a resident of that neighborhood, my apartment is like backed up against the Armory essentially. I think that option C makes the most sense. Hearing people's concerns about a plan that is pretty well thought out, I think makes this project go online a lot faster, without, I think, sacrificing the public having any say at all. We are a community together, so like having public input is super important to having these processes be transparent and holistic and sustainable. I also think that having a big housing project go in right on the Fountain Street, right when we're turning it into like a green path, makes a lot of sense to me. Like those things go hand in hand. So increasing the population that lives right there, particularly for families, I think is a really great step forward to creating more diversity in that neighborhood, particularly economic. I can't speak to what folks' families will look like moving in and out of that area, but I think that financially, most of the homes in that neighborhood are going for 400 plus. And that's whether they're multiple units that have like earning potential for the owner or not. So I do want to echo council. I think that we should have, I personally think we should have a mix of both rental and own like condo units. I don't have a specific ratio in mind right now, but I do think that there's value either way in having people that make a different level of income than the current residents in the area come into this space and use this space. Because people come from the other areas of Winooski to use the park there. And I think that'll just kind of like maybe tie the two sides of town together a bit. Yeah, so public piece.
Public engagement, we're on board with.
Cool.
Bryn,
And
I know
I
you
figured
had,
while I had the floor that I
Sure.
would get my thoughts.
I know you had questions.
Yeah, so I'll start with a couple high-level ones. So I'm curious if staff have reviewed or is familiar with Heather Carrington's, the former housing director for the city of Winooski, her previous work looking at gentrification in Winooski. You're familiar with that? Okay.
Yeah, actually the community economic development officer. But yes, she did a lot of housing.
Yeah, I don't know the title, but you know what I mean.
Yes,
She did a lot of things.
yes.
Anyway, what brings to mind is her work looking at gentrification, also the significant need, as Thomas has mentioned numerous times, of housing that's available to all types of needs, and curious why we're not looking at 120 AMI when that is often a standard, looking at market rate and low-income homes, and that being part of the recommendation that Heather's previous research suggested.
That was more for the rental price. So homes for sale, that would probably be higher towards 120.
Okay.
But for rentals, we don't really go above 100 because our median AMI in the city right now is like 80% for rentals. So while the term affordable is so different depending on who you're talking to, it can be below 120, it can be below 100, it can be below 80. Since our median rent is around 80, it doesn't go higher than that for any of the size of units. We are trying to start using 80 as like affordable for the rental price for Winooski, because higher than that is more than half of the units in the city. So that's just a range to it. And again, like that can change depending on who the developer is, ideally, things would be more deeply affordable. Ideally, there would be project-based vouchers there, which is why, 65 is around where that limit is. But homes for sale would definitely, be more. It's usually like, it's either 80 or 100 for rentals and then 120 for homes for purchase, because obviously the developer has to make some sort of, money or make it work somehow with developing it and then selling it. So.
Okay, follow up to that, and question that I've brought up for previous housing commission and I think council questions. What's our ability to influence having Winooski residents given priority? I know that there are some considerations that you've mentioned over the past year for legal standards, but Butternut, I believe, only had 5 of 20 units that went to Winooski residents. So what would our ability be to influence current residents having priority access?
Yeah, so Butternut actually did do a local priority, so they had a points-based system for how they prioritize or weighted applications. And one of those was, it's broad for legal reasons. So it's if you live, if you work here, if you have children in the school, they keep it broad so that you don't get an anti-discrimination lawsuit. But the likelihood is that we would be able to do that again this time. I think that paired with, we don't know who the developer will be, but that paired with additional resources now that are focused more towards BIPOC home ownership. If we pair it with housing trust fund programming, if we have a whole compliant mortgage, I think that there are a lot of things that the city could help coordinate and inform for whoever is managing the development for the leasing process, that I would think that we would be more successful in encouraging current residents to lease up there. Again, at the end of the day, if it doesn't, they have to rent to someone. So I think like what happened with Butternut is they started, looking for non-residents because they only got so many. But I would think the city, I think, has come a little bit further in our equity goals and kind of the formal and informal groups that we have contact with. So I would hope that with more of a coordinated effort with the building manager, could be the developer or another entity theoretically, that we would hopefully be more successful with that.
Gotcha. Is that something that would be part of the RFP?
Yeah, we could definitely include that. I know the interested developer has done that before, but yes, we could make that more explicit.
Okay.
Local preference.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. For some additional questions with greater depth of detail, has the city undertaken any brownfields projects in the past?
Well, technically O'Brien is, and I think we had some on Main Street. This one should be fully remediated though by the Armory.
Legally, they
Or
have
by National
to
Grid.
finish it before they can sell it.
Do we know what the draft terms and conditions will be of the purchase and sale agreement?
We would be covered by what's called umbrella insurance, which means that we would not be held liable for anything found in the future based on past activity.
Because I worry about us being kind of unintentionally and accidentally placing ourselves into a loop where we, as part of the purchase and sale agreement with the current owner, we agree to hold them harmless of any lawsuits that come to us, and the developer, whoever it may be, we also then are held to purchase and sale agreements with them that hold them harmless. So then we're not able to share any damages for contamination and health impacts that may be found in the future.
Right, so the state umbrella program would, participating entities that would include the city as a purchaser and the development partner, they could also be a participant. Those two entities would be held harmless from previous contamination. So we would not have liability from that.
And while there are conditions and requirements for the guard to complete full remediation, there's no way to guarantee that there won't be future impacts. So I also am interested if any assessment has been done on whether or not the site and the type of contaminants are appropriate for housing development. And if that has been
I don't know that we've
looked
done
at.
that per se. No. But again, the Brella program, that's how it's designed. Like anything that happened before you take ownership is not on you. So anything that happened before.
I don't want to create one problem while trying to solve another problem is the basis of my questions, if that makes sense.
If you're saying that we might cause an environmental justice issue, that's a separate question, which I am also concerned about.
That is what I'm getting at.
I see, okay. Yeah.
Basically placing affordable housing on a brownfield site, and if
Right.
that is not sufficiently addressed and addressed to standards, but standards change and shift as science changes and shifts,
Right.
and are inherently imperfect. If we know enough to say that the type of contaminants are such that, knowing what we know from other sites that have had similar contaminants, that we can confidently say there is very low risk of future harm to the residents.
Right,
So
I hear
building a
that, yeah.
brownfields for commercial industrial where there's not 100% occupancy, like 24/7, is different from, residential uses.
Sure. Yeah, and there's like, an old gas station is different from
Right,
somewhere with a lot
dry
of light.
cleaners,
So-
et cetera, yeah.
Right. So this site, most of there's two contaminants. One is lead, and I don't remember the other one. Do you remember, Jasmine? Asbestos. So those two are, I would say are like in a different category than gasoline and dry cleaning. I don't know what preceded the Armory. Those two things were from the Armory. So, yeah, again, it's the first right of refusal. So it could be that once we get into the, what do you call it? Reviewing of the deeds, like what happened before,
Yep.
the city could still pull out.
Environmental
the-
assessments, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they must have, I think they did that, and that's the basis of what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They provide a
haven't asked
report
them.
too, that will detail like the remediation and what level. They said we could access the full cleanup report, excuse me.
So I just want to make sure that before we head very quickly into let's build as many units on this property, that we're also being mindful that the research and assessment has been done so that we're not creating future harm.
Yep, hear that.
Thank you.
Are there other questions, comments? Do we want to revisit this homeowner-renter ratio discussion?
Do you guys know what was there before the Armory by chance? I just saw that you did the research on when it was built and stuff, so maybe it came up. Cool. And thanks for, your hard work on this, by the way. I can see the time that it took, and I appreciate it.
I don't feel strongly about whether or not there are zero rentals. I would say no more than 10%.
You want 90% owner?
I would say I would prefer 90% owner.
Okay, we need to have a discussion then.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say like 70, 80%. I know when I lived in condo associations, for example, no more than, I think the rates I've seen are either 20 or 35% could be rentals within a condo unit. They do that for different reasons, so I'm not saying that's perfect. But I do think the building should be majority ownership.
I think that's essentially what I'm leaning towards, and majority being 51% or
No,
majority
but
being.
I think like
you know.
70 or 80.
So.
Even I hadn't thought of 90, but if other folks agree, I wouldn't say no. I really, again, I mean, I talked for a while. You all know how I feel, but I really think it's important that I just don't know when we will see another opportunity to actually ask in an RFP that folks are prioritizing home ownership. I know once Main Street is done, we're gonna get a lot of rentals, and we have incentives to try to encourage what we want. If we don't think those are working, we should encourage the planning commission to come up with different incentives. But we don't have incentives for home ownership. I see this as being our only incentive.
I'm going to disagree strongly with the majority ownership because, one, incentives, there's no way we will ever create incentives that are going to make the amount of affordable family-sized rental units that we want. It's not possible unless we're actually forcing people, which we could do theoretically. But to the extent you do that, you also reduce the volume of units being created. And two, I have heard so frequently over the last several years from existing Winooski residents who are renting, who are not in a position to buy, and who desperately need larger apartments than they could get on the market and that will not be built along our Main Street corridor, just from like natural development. So I want to lift up what Jasmine said earlier, that it's just as hard to create those apartments for the large families that we already have in our city as it is to create affordable ownership opportunity. So I would be much more comfortable with something closer to 50-50, and also would not want to have such harsh language or such strict language in the RFP that it inhibited the developer's ability to financially make the project feasible. I would want to leave them some leeway and say we're looking at like around 50-50, but you have room on either end to go higher or lower with rent and owner.
I tend to agree with Christine on the 50-50. Also, I am that person. I am underhoused currently. I would like a second bedroom for an office or a guest room, or a kid one day, you know. So I think there are a lot of renters that are living with too many roommates or could really use extra space to like expand their lives and potentially expand their earning opportunities. Yeah, I think that 50-50 is where I land for now, given the information that I have. And then the developer is going to want to change that, I'm sure, one way or the other, based on what makes sense for their bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are also stories, I mean, you know, the owner of Offbeat Creamy famously had to move to Rutland because she was not able to buy a home in Winooski. There are also lots of renters who want to buy here and then leave Winooski to buy a home because they can't find anything to buy in Winooski. So I think, you know, we have, you know, both sides, people who want to rent something bigger, some people who want to build, buy something bigger. But I again stress the fact that the only way for most people to start to create any sort of wealth for themselves or for their family is through home ownership. It's not through renting. And if we want to think of the community as a whole and doing what is best for the community, and we're thinking of, you know, a healthy community going forward, giving people who have low incomes the ability to start to build wealth is, you know, for lack of a better word, that is huge. It enables folks to no longer be subject to, you know, I'd have $1,000, you know, medical bill that came up. I don't have money to source for that. When you have equity in a home, you can borrow from that equity to pay for that bill, and you no longer have those situations. You are able to set up income for children who you never thought you would be able to send to college. You can borrow from your home equity to assist them in that process. Home ownership is the only way most people can ever build any wealth. And in a community where we have very little wealth, I really think we can't ignore that.
Can we let Aurora speak, please? You haven't weighed in yet?
One thing that's popping up for me is the housing roundtable of thinking about asking for outside information. I don't
They have suggested majority rental
in the past.
in this specific project discussion.
Okay.
Because of and it's primarily related to our large Somali community who is majority underhoused, living in 2-bedroom or smaller units currently in Winooski.
So I also come back to what's our degree of influence for local priority? So
For
I'm not,
rentals?
for any of the units, what's our ability to have influence on local priority? The other degree is like, we can prioritize certain types of like rental versus owner occupied, but we are pretty limited on who ends up in those units. So what's to say that college students might not end up in those units versus families that are currently underhoused?
What was the efficacy of the points system? You said 6 units went to Winooski residents, but the other folks that moved in fell somewhere on the scale, whether they had kids in the school district or
I'm
Then
sure,
what's
I'm sure
the
income
developer
eligibility.
that wins the RFP is a developer that has done that
yeah.
in the
But
city
you asked the
before.
question. I think the answer is that's the tool we have. I think that
It's
was
not the tool
already
we have,
answered.
that's a tool the developer has. that
And we're
we
saying we
partnered
can
with.
put it in the RFP that they need to
Mhm.
use that model.
Correct.
Okay, that wasn't what I heard.
Yep,
We can do
we
that.
can do that, yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's how the developer chooses to do it. For example, CHT was able to do it. I would say it was in some way successful, 5 people were able to purchase homes there. I think it could be more successful.
It's a very different market now.
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
than
I mean, you
buying
just
that
have to be,
one-on-one.
it has to be done in a very careful way
Mhm.
to avoid anti-discrimination lawsuits and then also violating freedom of movement as well. So that's why it's a point system generally, and then other points that can be assigned are, people who have experienced like a natural disaster or have been evicted. There's a lot of points that can be included in that as well. But I think we can put wording in the RFP to specify that. But again, it might ultimately end up to the developer. Again, I don't think we will have a huge swath of people who would be able to financially make this project work because it is all affordable. We have very specific needs. Yeah, so like a for-profit developer likely would not be able to produce this project. Maybe I will be wrong and maybe we will see. I just don't know how you could, turn a profit on an entirely affordable building. So I think it will be a small group of people that I would imagine would be very willing to explore that idea. I'm happy to put it in the RFP. Obviously, we can't maybe guarantee that will happen, depending on legal advice, but it has happened, at Butternut, so,
It sounds like the mayor and Charlie are suggesting that be included.
yes.
Aim high,
Can-
if they want to take stuff out and negotiate, but we may as well ask for what we'd like.
Yeah.
Right?
Can you just clarify for me when you say all affordable? Because I thought it was only the rental units that were 100 AMI or lower, and that other
Uh-huh.
units were going to be market rate.
No, there's gonna be no market rate, yeah. The shared equity, shared equity is affordable by the nature of shared equity. And then the rental units would also be affordable. So the income banding, it would be, there would be different units set at 65, maybe some at 80, some at 100, just because we've learned that it's better to have a variety of different incomes, rather
Right,
than just.
which was to my previous question about Heather's research. So I just wasn't confused with the answer from before, and maybe I just misheard.
I think you just want to clarify what we mean by affordable for the homeownership parts. So you were saying it's because it's shared equity.
Yeah.
That's what makes it affordable.
Yeah, that's what it makes it affordable.
But those are also income restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every unit would be income restricted.
We talked at like 125%, 125%.
Yeah, and I will
AMI
say,
for
like, the shared
purchasable.
equity is affordable homeownership, but it's not, it's affordable to people who are, middle and low,
Yes.
middle low income, but definitely not low income people. Like, there is still financial requirement and commitment that a lot of our lower income residents would not be able to access, even if, we do outreach and things like that. It's great to envision that everyone will be able to access that, and it does reach so many more people than traditional homeownership does, but it's definitely not like a end-all be-all for every single low-income person in the city.
Right, if folks started saving now, if
Yeah.
they have no savings towards a down payment, like how many years and right?
Mm-hmm.
And what it's not just affordable if you make too much. They cut you off if you don't make enough. Like, that's
Right.
part of it.
On the shared equity side?
Yep.
Yeah, you have to earn enough to actually buy it.
Exactly. Yeah, to come in at a certain amount of your overall income to actually be affordable. So they decide that on both
Because they don't want to
ends.
set you up for failure, is what that sounds like to
Exactly.
me.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you
Though-
for mentioning that, though.
Yeah.
That's an important piece here.
Yeah, though of course sometimes rent is then more than what they're saying is unaffordable. It's like, well, we're gonna have to pay all that rent anyway. It's never a perfect model. And our housing situation is a disaster. Yeah, I can just speak that like it was a really hard process to go through the shared equity. And I'm glad that they've made it easier. And also that like partners, like Opportunities Credit Union is like, it's the reason that I'm a homeowner. So there's that too, like we have partners. And hopefully helping people get to the partners that will support them in the way that they need is really important too. I think I would say I'm comfortable with the 50-50. Yeah, I both want more opportunities for home ownership, and I'm also thinking the way that we are like losing, like families are leaving our school system because they can't stay in Winooski. And if the more immediate rental, and if we don't currently, if we continue not to have low mortgages, then having those rental units is important.
Brennan Thomas, would you be comfortable with language to the effect of not less than 50% shared equity with flexibility?
Well, I think we're outvoted here, so it doesn't really matter. No, I think it should be more than 50%, but no.
I'm saying not less, so this gives them leeway to go up, but the ability to, but they're at least committing to half, and it depends on where the financials work. They could do more than 50%.
They could, I'd like to tell them to do more than 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, could I get a vote, or I would entertain a motion to approve the public outreach concept that staff has proposed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aurora, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Abstain.
Oh, sorry. And I also wonder if someone would like to make a motion directing staff to include in the RFP requirement for local preference and language to the effect that we would like to see not less than 50% shared equity in the mix of units.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you all.
Thank you for the robust discussion.
Thank you.
On to item C, the strategic vision goal area updates for municipal infrastructure and safe, healthy, connected people. Who will go first?
I've got John listed, I think, right, because there isn't anyone else here for safe, healthy,
Oh,
except for me.
okay.
So makes sense for John to go first, since I gotta stay anyway.
Okay, welcome, John. You're muted still.
Thank you.
Aw.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So this is our first update for the FY24-25 priority strategies goals. So we have 5 vision areas that we have priorities for. Most of them are the big capital projects. So I think a lot of folks are up to speed on some of those, but I'll give some overview. The Abenaki Garage, obviously we had the update last meeting, so I won't get into too many details, but just a reminder on the schedule for that project. So the parking garage, the city-owned part of that project, is currently targeted for completion late summer next year. And then the privately owned hotel and housing would follow the spring of 2026. And this is based on a draft contractor schedule that we received when we met with the NETI team during that last council meeting. So other than that, there's not much of an update since that last meeting's discussion. Main Street projects, obviously we have a lot of weekly updates and monthly multilingual updates, but just in general, to give you an overview, just kind of on the background of the project. The project is on schedule. It still remains to be a 2-season project based on the contractor's last schedule submission this month. We are about 3/4 of the way through this first season of work, so we are starting to now think about wrapping up the project for the winter time. So that will mean, in early December, late November, we're going to start, paving the corridor, doing temporary paving north of Spring Street. There will be a base course installed south of Spring Street, which will be the final roadway base pavement, and then next year we'll do the top course. And south of Spring Street, you'll start to see what the corridor is going to look like. So there should be new curbing installed by the winter shutdown, some new sidewalks. Some of the features won't be installed, like the new ornamental lighting and some of the new trees, but you'll get to see sort of the geometry of the new corridor south of Spring Street. So, and that roadway work is happening right now, so you'll see the roadway reconstruction occurring throughout the next couple weeks there. Budget-wise, we're looking pretty good right now, so we're still well within the project budget. The total award amount was $22.8 million. We did have a large change order right at the beginning, as discussed during the bid approval. That was over $1 million. We've had about 15 change orders to date, which is typical for a project like this, where we have a lot of underground construction work, but we're still net about $1 million less than the original award amount. So budget-wise, we're holding up pretty well, and we're getting out of some of the riskier work, the more riskier underground work, I should say. So as we move into next season, that work should be a little bit more straightforward because we're not dealing with, unseen utilities, things like that. So we should see sort of less change orders and that budget sort of holding where we're under budget. So, and the contractor is still looking to start April next season to do most of the transportation work. And then on the bridge, we are looking to come to the council at the next meeting to present what's called the base technical concept. So this is sort of the some of the bones, like the 30% design of the bridge. So it'll show the alignments that will go in the request for proposal for the design build contractor. It'll show the geometries of the roadway, show the geometry of the sidewalk widths, and it will basically be the main sort of design that we're going to be presenting to a contractor, an engineer to bid on the project. We will also be presenting the things that are flexible in that design and the things that aren't flexible. So, for example, the width of the sidewalk or the shared use path is one of those items that's not flexible. The alignment, that may be able to shift a little bit here and there, but we'll present that at the next meeting. So you'll get an update on where the bridge project is during the next council meeting. And then other items, base infrastructure needs, we'll be getting into that very shortly with the FY26 budget planning. I think we'll be having a discussion, a joint meeting with the Finance Commission and the Infrastructure Commission at our October meeting. We've got to schedule that, make sure folks are available, but that's sort of our plan there. And I also included sort of a progress report on the bike ped initiatives. So there are a lot of initiatives we're already working on, specifically like the Main Street project covers, the most prioritized task, along with some of the work that's going to be upcoming with the signal at Hood's Crossing. And appreciate the plug for trying to extend sidewalk through there, because we will also be doing that on steps with V-Trans. So with that, I think that covers everything, and open up to any questions on municipal infrastructure.
When do we anticipate the traffic calming assessment?
Yeah, we were supposed to get that last week, and I have not received it yet. I expect we will have it this week and be able to share that with the Municipal Infrastructure Commission. So I'll make sure it's available for the Infrastructure Commission meeting, because I know it's close to being done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John?
All right, thank you, John. Lots of great work. Elaine, you want to do a little summary or just open it up if we have questions from reading the other update?
I'll just do two quick things. The O'Brien Community Center redevelopment project, unfortunately, the library did not receive the state grant for library rehab, so we have more fundraising work to do. And then, but in good news, if our two current, I don't think they call them cadets anymore, but candidates finish a police academy, as we expect that they will, and with return of a sergeant, on the law enforcement side, we're going to be fully staffed, and once the new officers are cleared with field training. So that is a very, for us, an unusual situation. So hopefully that sticks. We will be down. We are down dispatch, but yeah, on the uniform side, that's good news.
I feel like there's been a vacancy on the team for at least 2 years, maybe more.
Yes, longer than that. Well,
Yeah.
there was one that was like a long medical leave, and so didn't count as a vacancy, but yeah, it's been a while since we've been to 15, fully staffed.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
We're still down an
Time.
officer with full staffing compared to historical.
I would put a plug in for department presentations during budget. It would be interesting to hear. Not much time will have passed. Never mind.
Correct.
I was going to say
Actually,
the
no
impact
time.
of being fully staffed.
Right,
but
no time will have passed
No
because
time
we
will
won't
have
have the
passed
new officers fully online yet.
Never mind.
But appreciate that, yes, that request. That is the plan for next year.
Yes. Tell us about it in 6 to 9 months.
Yes.
Anyone have questions on the Safe, Healthy, Connected People update?
How's progress on, can you speak to any additional details on renovations for the police department?
Yes, we got some bids back, and reviewing them is next on the docket. It's on John's list to do.
Do you have an anticipated timeline that you're aiming for, like end of FY25 or?
I don't know. John, are you still there? Do you have a sense if that's likely or possible?
Yeah, I haven't seen those yet. Those went right to the chief to review. I think we got 4 or 5 proposals in from architects. The schedule would be to award that work. Well, ideally, the plan was to award it so that we'd have some pricing for the budget. So I think I'll get with the chief and see if we could select a contractor, an engineer, architect by the the end of this month. But I'm not sure that's gonna get us enough time to actually have some construction values for the FY26 budget discussion.
Did we
That's-
identify in the RFP a budget that we were trying to stay within, or was it an open RFP for, this is the type of work, what would the cost be? Was it more open?
Yeah, it was more open,
Okay.
but we had meetings, we had walkthroughs with all of the proposed architects, and the scope of work is pretty minimal, I would say. A lot of it's just updating the building downstairs. So, for example, new drywall, new flooring, a lot of those sort of just, refreshing the space downstairs. However, we didn't do a deep dive into the HVAC system, which that's where we could find some potential costs there. So, yeah, it is, to answer your question, it's pretty open.
Okay, thank you. Recently, there was need for a neighboring municipality's K-9 unit. Is there any thought of revisiting that conversation?
I haven't heard anything recent. It would be dependent on an interested officer. So I haven't heard any update on that in quite some time.
Yeah, obviously, it's still within a year of the new chief being named in his position, so it may be a little soon, but just seeing recent events and knowing that there is still available budget that was going to be drawn on for that, and I'm not sure if for renovations or going to draw on those available funds.
Available funds for a K-9 unit?
We approved that in previous budget year. Or okay, we definitely were going to. Did it get pulled? Did he find out that officer wasn't interested anymore before we finalized that budget?
I think possibly. Is that it?
Please follow up, Elaine.
Yeah.
If you could confirm,
Yes.
because I thought there were funds allocated, but I don't know if it's unused, if that's just needs to be reapproved, or
Yeah, because I feel like it might have
I'm
been
not sure
coming
how
from the
that works
feds.
year over year, fiscal year to fiscal year.
If we approved it and it was put in, it's really just part of the operating budget.
Yeah,
Right, there's
So it
that.
could be used for whatever else they're doing.
yeah, that might have been. Because I think we talked two different dogs. There's the K-9 unit, and then there's also like the
comfort dog.
comfort dog.
I kind of think that the interested officer pulled out before we actually
Yeah.
finalized, and so it didn't happen, but I'm not.
Yeah,
really-
I can tell you that I'm not currently carrying a K-9 unit in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
As such.
Yeah.
And what's I'm not gonna get this word right, if,
Oh, so,
forfeiture funds?
Asset forfeiture.
Actually, yeah, the K-9, let's see. My notes are showing that that's what we were talking about for that, so it wasn't out of the current
Not
budget
out of the
per se.
general fund.
Sorry, so when I was looking at that, you started talking, so I didn't hear all of it. You were asking for an update on spending on that, or what? What was it?
So how about we change the question?
Yes.
Do we still have available asset forfeiture funds that we are intending for a particular purpose? Renovations, K-9 unit? et
We have funds, however, what's allowed to be used for that has become more restrictive. Angela's nodding because she's more familiar. Can you speak to that, Angela?
I would have to go through the new regulations, but a lot of what we had previously used asset forfeiture for during criminal investigations is no longer an allowable use. We have primarily been using asset forfeiture for equipment for the new SRT team. There is still quite a bit of funding available, but we do not have as steady a stream of inflow for that as we have had in the past.
Right, so thinking one-time use.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that would come up in terms of like budget session, what's available, what one-time needs.
Yeah, so previously, we had heard asset forfeiture money we are sitting on some, could be used to cover these renovations.
Correct.
So it'd be good to get a follow-up on
Whether it
where
can
that
be.
stands.
Right, yes, understand.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's any other money sitting unutilized, that would be applied.
The facility is an allowable use.
Ah, okay, wonderful, thank you. I was afraid that wasn't going to be the case anymore.
Any other questions?
No?
We would just need to get prior authorization prior to doing any work on improvement projects.
Makes sense.
No gold bathrooms, for example, I imagine.
Okay, that item's discussion only. We don't have any public. This is the end of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aurora, second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.